The dependent verification form sitting on my desk had a name I'd never seen before. I'm Commander Micah Nixon, 34 years old, Navy intelligence, currently stationed at Camp Humphreys, South Korea. Been deployed here for 8 months. The paperwork came through routine channels. Standard dependent allowance verification. Nothing unusual about the process, except the dependent listed wasn't mine. Sarah Elizabeth Chen, age 26, listed as my spouse. Effective date showed 3 months ago, right around the time I started getting extended. The form had my signature, my service number, my home address in Norfolk, Virginia. I'd never been married. I pulled up my personnel file on the secure terminal, cross-referenced the dependent database. Sarah Elizabeth Chen appeared in multiple systems. Medical benefits active, housing allowance approved, emergency contact information filled out completely. Someone had been very thorough. The signature looked perfect. Better than perfect. It looked more like my handwriting than my actual handwriting. I compared it to forms I'd signed last week. The loops were identical. The pressure points matched exactly. I called the personnel office at Norfolk. Petty Officer Martinez answered on the second ring. Sir, yes, we processed that dependent addition in March. All documentation was in order. Came through your unit's admin office with proper authorization codes. Who submitted the paperwork? Let me check the file. Shows here it was submitted by Petty Officer Rodriguez from your intelligence unit. Said you were deploying and needed to get your wife's benefits activated before you left. Rodriguez. My admin specialist. The guy who handled all my paperwork for the past 2 years. The guy the first trusted with my security clearance documentation. The guy who had access to every piece of personal information in my file. I hung up and stared at the form again. The address listed for Sarah Elizabeth Chen was an apartment complex in Virginia Beach, 20 minutes from base. I'd driven past that complex hundreds of times. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Thanks for the extra income, Commander. Your wife appreciates it. The message deleted itself 3 seconds later. I needed to understand how deep this went before making any moves. Rodriguez had been my admin specialist since I transferred to Norfolk 2 years ago. Quiet guy. Efficient. Never caused problems. He processed my security clearance renewals, handled my travel orders, managed my personnel files. I'd recommended him for advancement twice. The trust had been absolute. In the intelligence community, you don't survive without it. I pulled Rodriguez's service record from the personnel database. Clean file. No disciplinary actions. No financial problems on record. Married to Maria Rodriguez. 2 kids. Living in base housing. But something felt wrong about the timeline. I cross-referenced the dependent addition date with Rodriguez's duty schedule. March 15th. The day the Sarah Elizabeth Chen paperwork was submitted, Rodriguez had been on leave. Family emergency in Texas. I remembered because I'd approved the emergency leave request myself. Someone else had submitted that paperwork using his credentials. I called Chief Petty Officer Williams in Norfolk. Williams ran the admin office with military precision. If anyone would remember unusual activity, it would be him. Commander Nixon. How's Korea treating you? Need to ask about some paperwork from March. Dependent addition submitted by Rodriguez. You remember anything unusual about that day? Williams paused. Rodriguez was on emergency leave that week. His wife's father had a heart attack. But yeah, we processed dependent paperwork that day. Came through the system with all the right codes. Who physically submitted it? That's the thing, sir. It came through electronic submission. Digital signatures, scanned documents. Everything looked legitimate. We get maybe 2 or 3 of those per month. Usually from deployed personnel who can't come in person. Electronic submission. That explained the perfect signature. Someone had scanned my real signature from other documents and digitally placed it on the forms. I hung up and opened my laptop. Started digging through my financial accounts. My bank showed the dependent allowance deposits starting in March. Extra $800 per month. The money was being direct deposited into my primary checking account, then immediately transferred out to an external account. The external account belonged to Sarah Elizabeth Chen. I called my bank's fraud department. Waited through the automated system until I reached a human. I need to trace some unauthorized transfers from my account. The representative pulled up my file. I see the transfers you're referring to, Commander Nixon. These were authorized through your online banking portal. The transfers were set up as automatic monthly payments to an external account. I never set up those transfers. The system shows they were established using your login credentials on March 16th at 11:47 p.m. The session originated from an IP address in Norfolk, Virginia. March 16th. The day after the dependent paperwork was submitted. Someone had accessed my online banking the same night and set up the automatic transfers. I checked my email for banking notifications, found them buried in a subfolder I never used. Someone had been routing my bank alerts to avoid detection. The IP address trace would take time. But I had enough to start building a case. I called Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park, my closest friend in the intelligence unit. Park was stationed at Pearl Harbor, but we'd worked together for 3 years before my Norfolk assignment. If anyone could help me trace this digitally, it was her. Micah, what's wrong? You sound like someone died. Someone's been using my identity to claim dependent benefits. I need help tracking the digital footprint. Send me everything you have. Account numbers, IP addresses, transaction dates. I'll run it through our cyber investigation tools. I transmitted the data through secure channels. Park called back within an hour. Your boy Rodriguez is clean. His computer access logs show he was offline during the entire submission window. But someone used his credentials to access the personnel system. Any idea who? The access came from a terminal in the Norfolk admin building. But here's the interesting part. The same IP address that accessed your banking account also accessed the personnel database. Same night. Same time window. So whoever did this had physical access to the admin building and knew Rodriguez's login credentials. Gets better. I traced the Sarah Elizabeth Chen bank account. It was opened in February using a fake social security number. The address matches an apartment complex in Virginia Beach, but the apartment number doesn't exist. The building only goes up to Unit 212. The paperwork lists Unit 220. Someone had created an entire fake identity, built it specifically to steal my dependent allowance. I pulled up the base directory and cross-referenced everyone with access to the admin building after hours. Security badge logs showed 12 people had access to the building during the relevant time period. One name stood out. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Webb, Intelligence Specialist. Same unit as Rodriguez. Same clearance level. Same access to personnel files. Webb had badged into the admin building at 11:15 p.m. on March 16th. Badged out at 12:30 a.m., exactly the window when my banking account was compromised. I'd worked with Webb for 18 months, solid analyst, good with computers, quiet like Rodriguez but more ambitious, always volunteering for additional duties, always looking for ways to stand out. I pulled Webb's financial records through the security clearance database, standard background check information, but something caught my attention in his credit report. Webb had opened 3 new credit cards in February, applied for a personal loan in January. His debt-to-income ratio had spiked over the past 6 months. Financial pressure, the oldest motive in the book. I called Park back with Webb's information. Run everything you can on Marcus Webb. Financial records, computer access logs, travel history. I think we found our guy. Already on it, Webb's been busy. The Sarah Elizabeth Chen identity was created using information from multiple personnel files, not just yours. He's been harvesting data from deployed personnel for months. How many others? Still counting. But I found at least 4 other fake dependents in the system, all created during periods, all using the same digital signature technique. Webb's been running this scam since last year. The scope was bigger than I'd imagined. Webb hadn't just targeted me. He'd been systematically defrauding the military dependent allowance system. I needed to move carefully. Webb was still in Norfolk, still had access to sensitive systems. If he suspected investigation, he could destroy or create more fake identities. But I had enough to contact the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Special Agent Jennifer Torres answered on the first ring. I'd worked with Torres on a security clearance investigation 2 years ago. She was thorough and discreet. Commander Nixon, been a while. What can I do for you? I need to report a dependent allowance fraud. Multiple victims. Suspect is active duty with security clearance. How solid is your digital paper trail, financial records, access logs? The suspect created fake identities to claim dependent benefits from deployed personnel. Torres was quiet for a moment. This is going to require a coordinated investigation. Financial crimes, computer fraud, identity theft. We'll need to move fast before he destroys. What do you need from me? Everything you have, and I need you to normal. Don't change your routine, don't contact the suspect. We'll handle this from here. I transmitted all my to Torres through secure channels. Bank records, personnel files, access logs, IP traces. Everything Park and I had compiled. 2 hours later, Torres called back. We're moving with the investigation. Webb is under surveillance as of now. We'll coordinate with your command structure to ensure operational security. How long before you move? Depends on what else we find. But Commander, you did good work here. This could have gone on for years. I hung up and stared at my computer screen. The Sarah Elizabeth Chen dependent form was still open. The perfect signature. The fake address. The systematic theft of my identity. Webb had been stealing from me for 4 months. $800 per month. Over $3,000 total. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the violation of trust. The betrayal of everything we were supposed to represent. My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Hope you're enjoying Korea, Commander. Your wife misses you. This time the message didn't delete itself. Webb was getting careless. The next morning, Webb walked into the operations center like nothing had changed. Same confident stride. Same casual nod in my direction. Same routine he'd maintained for months while stealing my identity. I kept my expression neutral. Torres had been clear about maintaining normal operations. Morning, Commander, Webb said, settling at his workstation. How's the family back home? The question hit different now. Every casual inquiry about my personal life had been intelligence gathering. Every friendly conversation had been reconnaissance for his fraud operation. They're fine, I replied, focusing on my morning briefings. Webb pulled up his computer and began his daily routine. Personnel files, dependent records, administrative systems. The same access he'd been using to create fake identities and steal from deployed personnel. My phone vibrated. Text from Torres. Surveillance team in position. Continue normal operations. At 1,100 hours, Webb excused himself for lunch. I watched him walk toward the commissary, knowing surveillance teams were tracking his every movement. Park appeared at my desk 20 minutes later. Torres called. They found something big. What kind of big? Webb's been running this operation for over 2 years. 15 different victims. All deployed personnel. All single with no dependents. He's stolen over $40,000. The scope hit me like a physical blow. $40,000. 15 victims. 2 years of systematic fraud. There's more, Park continued. They traced his digital footprint. He's been selling personal information to identity theft rings. Social security numbers, schedules, family details. My hands clenched involuntarily. Webb hadn't just stolen money. He'd compromised operational security, put families at risk, violated every principle of military service. When do they move? Tomorrow. They want to catch him in the... Torres needs you to trigger another transaction. How? Update your emergency contact information. Change your home address. Give him fresh data to work with. I logged into the personnel system and modified my emergency contact details. Changed my parents' address from Phoenix to Denver. Updated my emergency contact from my sister to my brother. Within an hour, Webb accessed my file. The next morning, Torres called at 0630. He took the bait. Created a new dependent identity using your updated information. Sarah Elizabeth Nixon, sister, Denver address. Filed for dependent allowance at 0545 this morning. You have him. We have him. But we need a confession. Computer fraud charges are harder to prove than financial fraud. We need him to admit the scope of the operation. What do you need? We're going to arrest him this afternoon. But first, we want you to confront him. Wear a wire. Get him talking about the other victims. The plan was simple. I would approach Webb during his lunch break. Confront him about the dependent fraud. Let him think I'd discovered it independently. Get him to reveal details about his operation. At 1,200 hours, I found Webb at his usual table in the commissary. He was eating a sandwich and scrolling through his phone. "Mind if I sit?" Webb looked up, surprised. "Sure, Commander. What's up?" I sat across from him, keeping my voice casual. "I need to ask you about something. My bank flagged some unusual activity on my account." Webb's expression didn't change, but his chewing slowed. "What kind of activity?" "Dependent allowance payments. For a dependent I don't have." Webb set down his sandwich. "That's weird. Probably just a system error. You should call finance." I did. They showed me the paperwork. Sarah Elizabeth Chen. Listed as my dependent. Filed 4 months ago. Never heard of her. The signature looked exactly like mine. Perfect match. Almost like someone had practice forging it. Webb's eyes shifted slightly. Identity theft is getting sophisticated these days. The thing is, the paperwork was filed from a military computer. Someone with system access. Someone who knew my schedule. Could be anyone with clearance. I leaned. The IP address traced back to our operations center. Specifically, to Workstation 7. Webb's face went pale. Workstation 7 was his assigned terminal. "That's impossible." "Is it?" "Because I'm looking at access logs that show someone using your credentials to access personnel files. Not just mine. 15 different deployed personnel over 2 years. Webb pushed back from the table. "I don't know what you're talking about." Sarah Elizabeth Chen. David Michael Rodriguez. Jennifer Ann Thompson. Should I keep going? Webb's hands were shaking now. "You can't prove anything." "I can prove everything. Bank records, access logs, IP traces. The FBI is already building the case." "The FBI?" "Financial Crimes Division. They're very interested in your operation. $40,000 in fraudulent dependent claims. Identity theft. Computer fraud. That's federal prison time, Webb." Webb looked around the commissary, panic setting in. "You don't understand? I needed the money. My mom's medical bills. I was going to pay it back. By stealing from deployed soldiers? By selling their personal information? I never sold information. That's not what this was about." "Then what was it about?" Webb's voice dropped to a whisper. "The dependent allowance was easy money. You guys were deployed. No one was checking. I just needed to get through my mom's cancer treatment." "How many victims, Webb?" 15. Maybe 16, I don't remember exactly. "How much money?" 43,000. Give or take. I sat back, letting the confession sink in. Webb had just admitted to everything on a recording that would destroy his life. "What happens now?" Webb asked. "Now you face the consequences." 2 military police officers entered the commissary. Torres followed behind them, badge visible. "Staff Sergeant Webb," Torres said. "You're under arrest for computer fraud, identity theft, and theft of government funds." Webb didn't resist as they cuffed him. He looked at me with something between anger and resignation. "I trusted you," he said. "You stole from me," I replied. "For 4 months." They led Webb away in handcuffs. The commissary had gone silent, everyone watching the arrest of someone they'd trusted. Torres sat down across from me. "Good work, Commander." His confession fills in the gaps we needed. What happens next? Court-martial. Federal charges. He's looking at 5 to 10 years in military prison, plus restitution to all victims. And the other victims? We're contacting them today. Full financial recovery. The military will cover any losses while we pursue restitution from Webb. I removed the recording device Torres had given me. The small digital recorder had captured everything. Will this hold up in court? Combined with the digital? Absolutely. Webb's military career is over. 3 weeks later, Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb pleaded guilty to 15 counts of computer fraud, 16 counts of identity theft, and theft of government property totaling $43,000. The court-martial sentenced him to 8 years in military prison, dishonorable discharge, and full restitution to all victims. I received a check for $3,200, the exact amount Webb had stolen from my dependent allowance over 4 months. But the money felt hollow. The real damage wasn't financial. It was the knowledge that someone I'd trusted had systematically betrayed that trust for months. 6 months later, I stood in the same briefing room at Camp Humphreys, where this all began. The morning sun cut through the windows at the same angle. Same fluorescent lights humming overhead. Same metal chairs arranged in perfect rows. But everything felt different now. "Commander Nixon," Colonel Martinez said, handing me a folder. "Your transfer orders came through. Fort Bragg, effective next month." I opened the folder. "North Carolina, a fresh start. 2,000 miles from Korea." "Thank you, sir." "You've earned it. What you uncovered here saved the military thousands in fraudulent claims." The investigation had expanded after Webb's arrest. Torres found 12 other service members across 3 bases who'd fallen victim to similar schemes, all involving records and dependent allowances. Webb had been running this operation for over a year. My case was just the tip of it. "Any word on the other victims?" I asked. "Full restitution completed last week. The military recovered 90% of the stolen funds from Webb's accounts. Webb had been smart enough to steal, but too stupid to hide the money properly. Most of it sat in a savings account under his real name." "And Webb?" "Military prison in Kansas. 8 years, no parole eligibility for 4. I nodded. Justice served, but it felt mechanical. Clinical. The betrayal had changed something fundamental in how I viewed trust. Every new face required verification now. Every friendship came with background checks I ran in my head. "There's something else," Colonel Martinez said. "We're implementing new security protocols for records, digital verification systems, multi-factor authentication." "Good. We want you to help design the training program. Your experience makes you uniquely qualified." The irony wasn't lost on me. The victim becomes the teacher. "I'll consider it." 2 weeks before my transfer, I received an unexpected visitor. Agent Torres knocked on my barracks door at 1,800 hours. She looked tired but satisfied. "Commander, got a minute?" "Of course." She handed me a manila envelope. "Thought you'd want to see this." Inside were photos from Webb's sentencing hearing. He looked smaller in the orange jumpsuit. Defeated. "He asked me to give you something," Torres said. She handed me a handwritten letter. Webb's messy scrawl across notebook paper. "Micah, I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know it wasn't personal. I was drowning in debt and made the worst choice possible. You didn't deserve what I did. I hope someday you can trust people again. Marcus." I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. "You keeping it?" Torres asked. "No." I walked to the trash can and dropped it in. "Some apologies come too late to matter." "Fair enough," Torres said. "One more thing. We're expanding the investigation nationwide. Found of similar schemes at bases in Germany and Japan. How many victims?" "Could be hundreds. This goes deeper than we thought." The scope kept growing. Webb wasn't just an opportunistic thief. He was part of something larger. "Need any help with the investigation?" "Actually, yes. The military wants to create a task force. Specialists who understand both the technical and human elements of these crimes." She handed me a business card. "Think about it." After Torres left, I sat on my bunk and stared at the business card. Financial Crimes Task Force. Department of Defense. A chance to turn my experience into something useful. Help other service members avoid what I'd gone through. The next morning, I called the number on the card. 3 months later, I was stationed at Fort Bragg, leading a team of investigators, tracking military financial fraud. We'd identified over 200 victims across 15 bases, recovered nearly $500,000 in stolen funds. But the work felt different than regular military duties. Personal. Every case file represented someone's trust that had been shattered. Every recovered dollar meant one less family struggling because of betrayal. I coordinate annual training on HIPAA protections for military families. The sessions always draw large crowds, service members hungry for information on protecting themselves from the Marcus Webbs of the world. During one training session, a young sergeant raised her hand. "Commander, how do you know who to trust?" The question hung in the air. 30 faces looking at me for an answer I wasn't sure I had. "You verify everything," I said finally. "Trust but verify, always." It wasn't the inspirational answer they wanted, but it was honest. After the session, I walked back to my office and found a message on my desk. Webb had been denied parole, still had 6 years left on his sentence. I crumpled the message and threw it away. Some chapters need to stay closed. That evening, I sat on my apartment balcony in Fayetteville, watching the sun set over North Carolina. The silence felt different now. Not empty, but earned. It was finally over, and the silence felt earned.